Before I went into this exercise, I wanted to reassess the tools and style I employ for digital artwork. When it came to doing fan art or rendering my own characters, I felt like I wasn't deliberately employing stylistic choices and would usually resort to a semi-realism that I didn't enjoy as much. So, to do some more practice in observing and rendering other art styles, I flipped to a random page in a Marvel character guide and scrolled to a random animated movie or show in my IMDb ratings history. And note, drawing in different boxes all around the page wasn't really for any conscious reason, but maybe it helped to treat each box as its own instead of relative to the last one. In any case, this was how it went. For the first one, I drew 616 Spider-Man in the style of Lilo and Stitch. Most of the characters have rounded facial features, whether that's the face shape, the eyes, hair, or ears. And I had Peter unmasked so I could practice with those particular facial features instead of having them all covered up. During a lot of the scenes, the main value rendering for the face is on the nose, which creates a soft kind of lighting effect. The line work is also done in colors other than black ink, and I'm not really sure how the original was done, but I used LOGH to color over the lines. Next, I randomly chose a character called Digger, who apparently made his first appearance in a Spider-Man comic and is an undead, gamma-irradiated creature. For the movie, I picked Cloudy with a chance of Meatballs. And as I'd find with my attempts to render a 3D animated style, namely those with more gradual or stylized features, it was kind of tough to try and do so in a way that resembled the media. And to be honest, I didn't really feel like I got the rendering down for this one, and the character doesn't really contrast with the background to the degree that I would have liked. Most of the references I used were also characters in the movie who didn't have green skin. However, I still liked trying to imagine this character's features in a movie that's very tonally different from the type that he would probably appear in. While the overall style is pretty different, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs also kind of uses rounded features for its characters, and I thought the eyes were a particularly distinct kind of shape compared to the other characters I'd be doing. The next combination was Surtur, who appears in some of the Thor comics, and the 1998 film The Prince of Egypt, back when DreamWorks was still working in 2D animation. Now, Surtur was kind of tough to illustrate because I don't think the movie really had characters that were animated with fire like right up against their face. The character is also kind of humanoid, but also a little bit inhuman because of those large fangs and large horns, so I ended up illustrating him closer to the human side, because most of the references I used were human characters in the movie. And fire, of course, plays an important role within the narrative, so there was some reference for rendering that. And unfortunately, I made the mistake of filling in some of the flats on the ink layer, which made it tough to use LOGH and change the color of the lines. And I didn't realize this until later on. But ultimately, I really like the style of Prince of Egypt, even if I'm not really sure how well I captured it. For the next one, I went back to 3D, and the character I picked was Wolverine in the style of the 2011 Puss in Boots movie. And I guess I could have utilized references from any human characters within the Shrek extended universe, but it was Puss in Boots specifically, so I mostly utilized reference from the characters Jack and Jill, to the point that I basically rendered Logan into one of the scenes that they appeared in. Looking back on this one, I think the rendering process felt most familiar considering that this was still a 3D piece of media. Compared to exaggerated 3D animated characters, I've done a lot more digital paintings with human subjects, so I was definitely more used to this one. One thing I particularly liked about the characters in the Shrek movies and spin-offs is how much the characters are rendered with more realistic but kind of exaggerated features that break through that realism. And given the medium, I think this really helps to bring those characters out of the uncanny valley. For the next one, I chose Huntara, a character who first appeared in the Fantastic Four comics, in the style of Avatar: The Legend of Korra. While the illustration felt pretty straightforward, I honestly didn't feel like it resembled something out of Legend of Korra. It kind of just felt like something made in a standard animation style with a monoline brush. I definitely struggled to pin down features that really characterized the Avatar style, as there were a lot of characters to choose from, whose designs are meant to fit their personality. And I did notice that the characters tend to have more practical clothing, but I also wasn't really that familiar with the character to stylize her to particular character traits. Like, I just knew that she was combat oriented, and in the Avatar universe that can really mean a lot of different things, so I wasn't really working with additional character information beyond that. The next one was Sunspot in the style of the 2011 Hunter x Hunter series. And one thing I knew is it would be pretty tough to make Sunspot look like a character who might exist within the narrative, since Togashi designs each character very differently according to their personality traits and their role within the narrative. The abilities of a lot of Marvel heroes could map onto non-abilities, so that aspect doesn't really feel too abnormal. And I also gave him a white turtleneck since I thought it could vary his design a little bit more than just the yellow and black jacket. But in the end, I really didn't feel like he looked like a Hunter x Hunter character. For the next illustration, I tried to draw She-Hulk in the style of one of the Mortal Kombat animated movies called Mortal Kombat Legends Snowblind. And I haven't played the game, so I only really know about the characters through feature films like this one. And as I remember, it's essentially a Mortal Kombat narrative that takes place in a post-apocalyptic kind of setting. Process-wise, this was a bit easier than some of the 3D paintings that I did. There are some interesting details that I saw in the style of this movie where the line work overlaps in some places, which added a bit more roughness and starkness to the animation. The movie features post-apocalyptic versions of the characters Cobra and Kira, so a lot of the way I stylized She-Hulk originated from their appearances in the movie. The next one I did was a character called Paladin, who I didn't know of before illustrating him, in the style of Paranorman. And the tough thing about trying to render something originally done in claymation is I need to emulate real forms that have been photographed with real lighting. At the same time, things like details on the skin are added rather than behaving like normal skin under light, and so that was a little bit tough. And one thing I had to keep in mind is I should be rendering everything as clay or other materials that have been sculpted and animated. I think the final painting looked a little bit too smooth in some areas, since there should theoretically be imperfections and light scattering in some places, along with more of a cast shadow, which are all things that are good to keep in mind for future work. For the 9th illustration, I picked Medusa, who often appears alongside the Inhuman characters in Fantasia 2000. And as I recalled, Fantasia tends to have a wide range of artistic styles, but I did find a picture of a character called the Spring Sprite that I decided to use for reference with the character. When it came to the color rendering, I honestly had a difficult time with the values since I hadn't really done a robust lighting study in a while. The lighting in that sequence is very delicate along with the line work, so I think I really struggled when that level of precision was required. And in hindsight, I think there were some portions where the shadows just kind of felt a little bit dark in areas, which sort of flattened out the image a little bit. And the shadows in the original appear a bit softer, where there are also some contrasting areas of light and dark with some translucent elements. And I think the arrangement of the character's facial features ended up being closer to the original than the actual rendering in the end. Moving on to the 10th illustration, I drew Super-Skrull in the style of Legend of the Galactic Heroes, Overture to a New War, which is one of the movies in that series, which presented the challenge of rendering a non-human but humanoid character in a show that, from what I've seen so far, uses pretty realistic world building in space and primarily human characters. I really don't think I nailed the Legend of the Galactic Heroes kind of style, but I did think it was a good exercise to practice with the thinner lines and attempt to emulate the older animation style from the show. And in terms of the fire elements, I didn't really find any images with a lot of fire reference, so I made a guess that with the animation process that they had at the time, that they might have used fire that appears more painted on than with its own kind of line work. This one definitely felt like the hardest painting to work on, as I picked Emma Frost in rendering in the style of the Lorax. There are a lot of characters to pull from in this movie in terms of reference, but everyone has very rounded features, and the lighting doesn't really render the same way it would on a more realistic face. This is also a movie from 2011 where some elements like hair didn't have as many technological advancements in terms of rendering as today, so that was pretty tough. And I did find reference photos from the movie, but the way I tried to go about the process ended up being a little bit difficult. Since I knew it was softer lighting, I tried rendering a lot of it with a soft airbrush, which was probably a mistake. The final painting feels a bit flat rather than having the 3D look I was going for. And overall, if anything, these attempts to paint 3D animated forms showed me how big of a difference there can be with just rendering the style in a 2D sketch versus rendering the characters with the lighting and environments found in their respective media. Finally, I picked Spider-Man 2099 and the movie Madagascar: Escape to Africa. And for this one, I ended up imagining Alex the Lion with the 2099 costume. It had been a long time since I had seen Madagascar 2, so I'd forgotten that there was actually a group of tourists that played a role in the narrative. I don't think they ended up in any cities during this movie, so I figured that the movie had only focused on the animal characters, unlike 1 and 3. In hindsight, I think I would have rather rendered Miguel based on the references to one of the tourists, but there were definitely more reference images of Alex available online. Between the first Madagascar and the sequel, the characters don't really seem to have significant differences in their styles, so the main detail I added to connect it to the sequel was the savannah background. There was also a screenshot of Alex that I used as reference, and the animal characters have a lot more angular features, so it was interesting to imagine a non-human character like Alex wearing the mask. In the end, there were a few takeaways I had regarding my own art style. For one, I enjoyed working with the exaggerated features on different characters, even if it was difficult to render at times. Second, in terms of rendering color, I think it was good to practice style beyond just the sketch phase, since different pieces of media employ various types of lighting to suit the overall feel. And finally, when it came to individual stylistic elements, I found that I took away more from the process rather than specific styles that I tried to render, at least at a conscious level. And all of these are really important to apply to my own kind of style and my own artwork. In the meantime, thanks for watching.